because of what happened to me as a kid, as we discussed, I promised myself I would never hide who I was. Like, I was like, I'm going to be me.
Really?
That's all I have. The only thing I'm like, I already know what it's like to be completely in the dark and living life behind a scrim. I already know what that's like. So when I came into accepting me, I had to accept myself as gay first. And that was at 16. I remember going to the bathroom mirror and I remember looking in the mirror and I noticed my camera. I'm like, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay. I said it over and over.
Shaun T, it is such a pleasure to have you here. You may not know this, but I have been, hunting you down for a long time, wanting you here, and I finally have you here. So welcome.
I am extremely honored to be here. I actually know you've been hunting me down. I actually know, and I'm very, it's so interesting when you see people and, social media is just like this thing where you're kind of like, who's that? What are they doing?
Yeah.
But I will say this, I am very happy to be connected with you. You are just such a ball of energy and just real. And, I love when I meet people who are just themselves.
Yes.
I think people try to be extraordinary when the most extraordinary you is you just being exactly how you are. And I just think that I really am attracted to people like that.
Well, what an awesome intro.
Oh,
yes.
Well, thanks. I mean,
I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think living life in the most authentic way that you can is so joyful for you that, I mean, it also can turn people off because they're just not, they're like, wow, how can that person be so free? Or it can seem like a lot. But I'm attracted to those people because I've been through a lot in my life where I wasn't being who I was. And so,
which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think to some degree, people who finally get to that place where they're truly authentically themselves quite often have been through a lot themselves, right? I mean, you have to have gone through a lot to get to this place where you're freed from tethered to feeling like you have to be someone else or something else that you're not, right? So that's what I want to talk about. We're gonna dive deep.
We can dive deep and dig deeper, like I say.
We're gonna dig deeper
in my workouts. I think oftentimes, well, first I'd love to say, I think Robin Roberts said it once, like everybody has something.
Yep.
And I say everyone's in the closet about something. And not only in the way that you think, but a lot of us have so much within us that we're not releasing that if we actually do, we can have just an abundant life. So I'm ready to share whatever you would like me to share.
I want to find out how you got here because I do feel like I could learn a few things from you for sure, right?
Yeah.
I do want to be even more. I want to free myself even more. So let's figure out how you got here. Let's actually backtrack. I want to start because I know you had a really rough childhood, and you told me that you are okay opening up about that, and that's a part of you. So let's back up to that and tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm happy you asked, and I do want to warn people that I am probably one of the most vocal people about my essay or sexual abuse because sexual abuse, especially as a child, is you have to understand that it is the foundation of your psyche, right? Like everything starts when you're a kid, and all of us can think back to a time when we were a kid that was really impactful for us, to something as joyful as Christmas or to something as, terrible as like breaking your arm for the first time, right? But for me, the most impactful thing that happened to me was literally being sexually molested at 2:00 in the morning by my stepfather. And not even recognizing the signs that it was going to happen, but immediately going into fight or flight. And I didn't know this as a kid, but I realized that I'm a fighter. Like if it's fight or flight, I have to fight through this, you know.
How old were you?
I was 8, believe it or not. And the first time it happened, and like I say, brace yourself. So back in the day, first of all, I lived in Jersey where we had basements, right? So I know there's a lot of states that don't have basements, but in Jersey we have basements. And we were having like a movie night, and it was just my stepfather, my cousin, and myself. And during the commercial breaks, you know, back in the day, they were long, you know, he would send my cousin to the kitchen. He's like, I want you to get this, and this. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can just like relax down here. And that was the first time that my cousin left, went to the kitchen. My stepfather turned out the lights and French kissed me. And I was like, what? So you have to understand as a kid, not only is that crazy, but this person that is doing this to you is the person that is the one that's supposed to be protecting you, the one that, you know, showboats you around. Now, mind you, it's my stepfather. It's not even my real father. Right. So prior to that, I'm definitely feeling like, wow, like this person actually wanted me as a son, right? And like, again, would showboat me around. Like I'm not his DNA, but I kind of look like him. So it was just kind of like this connection we had. So then my cousin comes back down. He sends my cousin up on the next commercial. And the second thing he did to me is a little bit too vulgar to share, but it had to deal with like rape. And so you have to understand, a lot of people would say immediately, like, why didn't you run upstairs or like tell your mom? And it is like this shocking thing. So it kind of, nothing happened after that. But then the meat of it happened. I would be asleep it would be 2:00 in the morning. He would come in my room. Yeah. He would perform oral sex with me and then leave. And this happened over and over and over again. And what I realized is, because he was an alcoholic and he was an abusive person to my mother, is that I always felt like if I were to tell, then he would, I honestly thought he would kill my brother and my mother, because we were the only ones in the house.
That's so much weight to hold for a child.
It was a lot. And it's heavy.
That's heavy.
It's very heavy.
That is very heavy.
But in that situation, I felt powerful, meaning it's kind of hard to explain or for people to understand. But in that situation, I was like, well, I hold the power here, because if I take on this weight, then everyone else is okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do understand that. I'm getting what you're saying.
Yeah. So so that happened from the time I was 8 to the time I was 12. And then he stopped once I was able to have an orgasm.
Wow.
And then the craziest thing happened. This is where people really need to brace themselves.
Yes.
That's when I like wanted it, because I felt abandoned. I'm like, I did all this. I protected you. I did this. Like, you know, that's when it was just.
Yeah.
And that was when mentally I started to go crazy, because I'm just like.
You almost like wanted it, but then you knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
And you're a kid.
Yeah.
You don't really have anyone to talk to.
Stockholm Syndrome to the max.
And then you almost feel like he's rejecting you now.
Exactly.
That's
very much so, to the point where, and again, I always like to say brace yourself, because people don't understand this, to the point where I felt like I had to seduce him to try and get attention, because it wasn't just like, I'm not doing this to you anymore. Right. It was like, I just didn't exist.
I understand what you're saying.
You know? And so that is where Dig Deeper comes from.
Wow.
Because in my life, like, I'm like, nothing is worse than that. And you don't know it's bad until you're out of it. It's like someone in an abusive relationship. Like, you know it's bad, but you do all of these things to make it okay. Right. But not until you see the light do you realize how horrible it was. Okay,
you're in this moment and you know that this is bad. You know this is wrong. You're at the point in your life where you have the wherewithal to realize, I need to get mentally and physically and emotionally out of this situation. Right. So how did you do that?
Well, my grandfather was a pastor. And my grandmother and grandfather lived about a mile or so away.
Okay.
And I just remember being in this toxic environment at my home. Okay. And my grandmother would always visit our house, but she never came inside, which I thought was very profound. I didn't realize until later in life. I'm like, of course she didn't go in there. Like the devil was like running rampant, right, to her. And so she pulled up one day and I just walked up to the car and I was like, can I come live with you? And she was like, let me go ask Pop-Up. And so that was 14 years old. And so at 14 years old, I moved in with my grandmother and grandfather. The first night I was in
Did
their
you
house,
sneak out or you just
No, I went and told my mom. I was like,
I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well, I made up a story. I was like, my mom and Pop-Up are getting older. I'm a strong young guy. Like they need help around the house. When really I just needed help to get out of this house. And I felt like they knew, like they just knew, you know? I felt like they knew. And I remember the first night I was at their house. I went to bed and I literally just started crying, like in the most, like the loudest release of cry. My grandmother and grandfather ran into my bedroom.
You were like, you're so relieved.
Yeah, and they got down and, they started praying for me. And I remember growing up, so this is where it's going to get a little crazy.
I'm getting chills.
Growing up, I went to this camp when I was 7 years old. And this camp, it was a Christian camp. It was a sleepaway camp. And I just remember them saying, like, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior, you're going to go to hell. And I just always thought that was like, I was just like, we're kids. Like, what do we do? Like, I'm born a sinner. I'm like, I didn't even ask to be here. And so I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal savior. And then at 8 years old, I went to hell. Oh. So I had major issues with going to church and being like, wait a minute. Like, I thought you go to hell if you don't do that, right? And so I remember that first night, my grandmother and grandfather coming in praying over me, and I was like, oh, this is me being born again. Like, because I got through something. I know it's a people probably have never heard anything like that before, but that cry of letting out all that hate and pain, and just they were praying for me. I mean, I think we prayed for like an hour. And I'm gonna tell you something. I woke up the next day a brand new human. I was like, I felt free. I started to become who I was.
Did you forgive yourself?
I didn't forgive myself until much later in life. Okay. Because at that point, I'm living in the endorphin state, right? Like I'm just like, I'm free. I can be a kid.
It's over.
Yeah. I went to high school. I played sports, but I started to enjoy sports. I started to excel in sports. I was like vice president of my class. I was homecoming king. I just started to thrive in who I was.
Yeah. Now you did a lot of, you were a performer, you did a lot of dancing and
yes.
I almost wonder if that was an outlet for you also to be able to express yourself.
Yeah, dance.
How did you get into that?
So when I was in high school, I was a part of something called the Erase Club, which was End Racism and Sexism Everywhere. But the way we would showcase ourselves was through stepping. Like,
I remember that.
Yeah. So I actually ended up pledging a fraternity in college, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. But I was,
that's badass.
Yeah. So at the pep rallies, we would be like stepping and like, rallies. And I was, I was the only guy. So I was, so I was just like, back in the 90s, I mean, it was, people still kind of looked at guys in that dance formation thing as they snubbed their nose at it. But I'm like, listen, I didn't live from the time I was, 0 to the time I was 14. I'm living my best life. So if you don't like me, that has everything to do with you and nothing to do with me. But I went to a school. I mean, I was
been through so much that you were like, fuck it.
I was just being who I was. And, I didn't really get lots of judgments. I had like a lot of friends in school, so it was great. But so that was my first intro into like movement. Yeah. And then I ended up going to college and I started dancing. I think it was my sophomore year in college. I went to the recreation center and I said to the program manager. I was like, hey, I really want to teach a hip hop aerobics class. And she was like, have you ever taught before? And I was like, no, but I can dance. I'm in every dance circle around here. So wait a minute. So I don't know if you remember the grind workout, the MTV grind workout with Eric Nies and
Are you kidding
Cats
me?
of the Real World. Right?
Are you kidding me? I do.
So we did that as a building program.
Okay.
Because I was a RA, a resident assistant, and I just remember.
So was I.
Oh, let's go! I'm not surprised at all. So So I was like, I'm just going to teach this dance. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I can do this. So I put my music together, taught that. But what happened was I went to the newspaper of the school and I was like, I'm going to teach a class. Can you put it in? I did a photo shoot. I thought I was all that, right? Well, 90 people showed up to the class and only 60 people could take the class. So I ended up having to teach 2 classes back to back.
I remember reading about that.
But it was so lit. Man, so then the program manager.
You say like all nonchalant, like 90 people showed up. 90 people show up to your class.
I know, it was so.
That's nuts.
But we didn't have anything like that. Like we didn't there was no dance fitness. Like we would only be able to dance at
now,
parties.
had you taught a class that size before that? Was your first?
I never taught a class before.
Okay, so this is your first time teaching a big class, and you killed it.
Yo, I slayed the game. And I'm not even patting myself. I'm patting myself on the back. I'm not saying it in like this boastful way. When I tell you I slayed the game, I was like, yo, because when you go to do something you've never done before, especially presenting,
I know.
People are oftentimes so afraid to be in front of a room. But for me, I was like, well, I need to act like I'm at a party and I'm dancing with these people. And then it just
I've
came
been in that
easily.
same situation. I get that so much. You have no idea. So were there any guys in your class?
At first, no.
I was going to say, I was wondering if
all females.
All females? Okay, but you rocked that.
Yeah, I slayed the game. So then, but a little bit later, when I started working out in the weight room and doing all that kind of stuff, and then I would become cool with guys. I was like, guys always wanted to do it, but they always thought like taking a group exercise was weird. Now you have things like Barry's Boot Camp, Soul Cycle. Now guys, CrossFit, it's become like a thing. And my insanity workout when it was in gym. So,
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, but they guys, they would, they would always stand outside and look. Yeah. And I would be, wait. So I would go, they were like, oh, I want to take class, but it's like a bunch of girls in there. And I'm like, exactly.
Odds are great.
Bruh, we are in school. You go in there and dance. Like if you go in there and dance and you can dance, like you're pulling the girls. Trust and believe. I always tell people, I'm like, man, a gay man is a straight guy's best friend, man.
Right.
Like y'all need to utilize us for what we are good for. Okay,
so now I know that you were doing, this was like around like the 90s, right?
Yeah, it was the late 90s.
Late 90s. And coming out as gay was socially accepted to a degree, but it's not quite what it is now.
Correct.
So tell me about your experience, like coming out as when you first, kind of decided to make it known.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little different than a lot of people because
different is good.
Yeah, exactly. Because of what happened to me as a kid, as we discussed, I promised myself I would never hide who I was. Like, I was like, I'm going to be me.
Really?
That's all I have. The only thing I'm like, I already know what it's like to be completely in the dark and living life behind a scrim. I already know what that's like. When a musical begins, oftentimes they have a scrim and you can only see like soft colors and light movement. You don't really get the full big picture until the scrim goes up and then the lights are there and the music is loud. I'm like, why am I going to go back there? Yeah. So when I came into accepting me, I had to accept myself as gay first. And that was at 16. I remember going to the bathroom mirror and I remember looking in the mirror and I noticed my camera. I'm like, you're gay, you're gay. You're gay. I said it over and over and over. I was like, I need to just accept this is who I am. And that was it. So I did that. And then one day I was dating someone and I had to tell my mom. I was like, oh man. Because I lived in a Christian household. So my grandfather my boyfriend at the time had to go to my grandmother's house and pick up something for me. So he walks in the house and my grandfather says, I need to have a conversation about the relationship you're having with my grandson. Oh. And my grandmother was lit though. She ran interference. She was like, Charles, he's here to, pick up something. He doesn't have time for this. So then my mom kind of like got involved a little bit. She kind of ran interference. And then, so I was just like, all right, this is my opportunity. And I just remember going to the house, like maybe like not even a week later. And I told my mom, I was like, can you come to the room? I have something to tell you. And I told her. And she was like, okay. Like,
she was okay with it.
Man, that's why I'm like, I definitely feel blessed because my mom did not, like, she literally had zero. She was like, you're my son. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. She's like, what you want me to do? Yeah. She definitely was like, she had like a lot of fun with it. And, but she was like, the guy I was living with, she was like, wait a minute, that's not your roommate, is it? I was like, no. She was like, she was like cutting up with me. I also ended up telling her about my molestation that night as well. I was like, I'm just going to get this. I was like, I got to get this all out at once. So it was a lot for her, but Mom, if for those who know me and people who are listening to me now, I have my mom's personality. Like I'm talking, I'm not listening as much, but she's going to listen. She's going to be open. She's very open-minded. Yes. And she also believes that this is the only life we have. Like we have to literally live our best lives. Yeah. And she's like, I brought you into this world. Like you didn't ask to be here.
So you seem like somebody who doesn't let anything affect you. You don't really seem bothered by what people are going to judge you by. You decided at 16 that you want to just be who you are. Was there ever a situation where you struggled through this, or was there anything that really hurt you, or you just completely just
what affects me more than anything is when people bully other people. That affects me more than when people, say mean things to me or try to bully me, because I'm just like,
it doesn't affect you.
Here's my view on people who don't like you, especially if you're a good person.
Tell me.
Right? My view is when someone is saying rude things about you or being rude to you or talking or gossiping about you, right? Like, I don't like Wendy because X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Guess what? 2 minutes after they say that, they're not thinking about you. They go home, they laugh with their friends, they have a good night's sleep. They do all of these things, but they're not thinking about you at all until someone else brings your name up, and they want to speak negatively of you. But those negative moments for them last for moments, but they last a long time for you. Yeah.
I don't know. I have a little bit of a different perspective on this.
Oh, I would love to hear it.
Yes. I actually think that people who take space in their mind to think about you are a lot of times your biggest fans. If somebody comes to your page and like for me, I have a lot of content that's long, like a whole hour worth of an episode or whatever, an interview. And if somebody makes a comment, like a negative comment about something that happened at the end of that whole hour, that means they watched the entire hour, spent an hour of their time to watch what I did and say something negative about it. That's a lot of time spent on like not liking somebody. So I actually think that it's a lot of time that they spend not liking you, which means they probably really love you.
Yeah, I think that I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But they don't think about you after they make the rude comment. What I'm saying is like you spend more time being affected by what someone says than them being affected by what they said to you. Right. But to your point, you're right. I mean, most people who at least constantly like say negative things about people who are good people. There are people who aren't good people that you're like, why is this person even allowed to be like that? Or they're affecting you in a negative way.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
But, jealousy is the biggest form of flattery, right? It's kind of like that thing. And I also say this, and this is a stretch, but there's also such a thin line between love and hate. And I'm not just saying that because there was a movie named that the title of that. Because the reason why I like you, I'm using this as an example.
Yeah.
The reason that I don't like you is probably the reason why I really like you. I just haven't been able to talk to you to be able to understand or get to that level, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's wrong with the world today, especially this is the one reason why I don't like social media, because people can come in, put a comment, but they have no idea how you actually got to that place, you know?
Or they just want to get your attention. And then when they do, then they're like, oh my gosh, Shaun, I love you. I can't wait. I can't believe you responded to me. And it's sometimes that's all they just can't believe that you're a real person. You know what I mean? A lot of times that's what it is too.
It is.
You get so much of that, I'm sure. I mean,
I'm just kind of like, girl or guy.
And you made a post recently about, being careful about who you let into your space, because for you to be able to maintain this level of resilience, you have to be really protective of your circle. You have an orbit around you that you have to protect so that you don't get affected, because that's probably an ongoing challenge and something you have to constantly train yourself to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get there. I remember I was just always, also another thing that you do when you're different, especially like when you're just different, like, I could easily use the gay card, but there are also people who are like considered quirky or just like, they're not the norm, right? Even though I don't think there's any such thing as normal. We just try to
Nothing's normal.
To norm.
No one is normal.
But anyway, when I forgot what I was going to say.
I wanted to say that it's what's interesting, and this might prompt you a little bit, but when you were 16 and you decided, like, what do I have to lose? I'm going to be myself. This is who I am. It's not like in that moment you were able to 100% overcome all the adversity and, all this stuff that you say you've worked a long time on, and it took you a long time to work on it. It was the moment that you decided that you were going to just be yourself. That's when the work started for you. Right. That's when you really started to put in the work to be true to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that you reminded me. You sparked me. What I was going to say was when I was 25, maybe, I remember a friend of mine saying, you let people get too close to you. And I actually was offended because I was just like, what do you mean? I'm like, I love people. I love having fun. I like having a lot of, interactions. And then when I got older, I realized what he said, because not everybody has your best in your best interest at heart, right? And so then I realized, you know what, you have to create a positive force field around you. And you can be kind to people and you can do good for people, but you don't have to let them in your space if they're not giving you what it is that you need. And that is okay.
Yeah.
It is 100% okay. Like, your personal space is yours for a reason. I tell people you are the nucleus of your existence. If our sun were to die right now, 8 minutes later, when the light stops shining, we would immediately go into cold, right? Yeah. So if you are your own sun, so you have to be able to protect yourself so that you can continue to give warmth and light to the world.
I love that. Right now you're an ongoing sensation. You're deep into your fame and fortune, which is amazing, and you deserve every ounce of it.
Thank you.
When you started when you first were discovered, I would say it was around, when I first kind of learned about you, it was around like 2009. You came out with P90X.
Insanity.
I'm sorry, not P90X. Why did I? P90X.
People always confuse the two because they were both.
I don't confuse the two. That's the thing. Insanity. I don't know why I said P90X. So you came out with Insanity, and it was, you have been my all-time idol since.
Aww.
You, Insanity. Not P90X. So
Tony's awesome, though.
He is awesome.
The P90, I will say this. I love giving props to Tony because P90X was a phenomenon just as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Shout out to Tony. But yes, you can say you love me.
Thank you for correcting me, because I don't want you to have to take the heat for what I just said.
Oh, no, it's fine. I don't mind.
Well, P90X was amazing, but when Insanity came out, that was my jam. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to be like you. I loved your energy. The message that you had in the infomercial was like the first time I saw somebody who gave a message that I could really relate to. It was like every other message was all about like, you know, you don't have to work hard. You just take my course and you're going to get results without ever having to. And you were the first person that was like, look, this program is not for you. If you're lazy, if you don't want to work hard. And I was like, yes, that's my guy.
Yo, you are the first person. You're the first person where that literally told me that in an interview. And I will tell you this. I remember being on set in the infomercial, and I was so over these infomercials that were like, it's so easy. You just got to drink this for 3 days and you can have like, you know, the Miami South Beach diet or whatever. And I just remember when the CEO, he actually asked me the question. He was like, can you like tell people that you know they can do it? I was like, it's not for a person who's lazy. It's not for a person who finds excuses. It's only for the person who's ready to take their body to peak physical condition.
Boom.
There's no way
Sold.
I'm trying to get you to buy this.
Yeah.
To think that is going to be easy. I want you to know that it is extremely hard so that I am trustworthy.
Yep.
Because you, like, you know, I have the podcast and I have the tattoos on my arm. If I tell you to trust and believe, but you don't trust and believe in me and my honesty, then this whole thing is pointless.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's hard. Yeah. I want you to do the fit test and literally almost throw up, because if you can get through this, and I didn't create Insanity for you to do it forever. I created Insanity for you to say, hey, if I can finish this, then I can commit to my fitness. I can conquer the world. I can go out there and believe who I am outside of this workout, you know, and I created that workout partly because I said to myself, like, the psychology of self, if you are doing a workout, and yeah, Shaun T is there being like, you know, you're right there. Like, I'm motivating you to push through. But who is really in control? Mm-hmm. You, the user. Yeah. So if for 40 minutes a day, you're constantly being like, yo, I can do this, even subconsciously, do you know how much of an impact that makes on your life? Mm-hmm. That's why I refuse to lie and be like, anybody can do this. No.
But when you came out with that, it's like all of a sudden everybody wanted a piece of you. Everyone wanted Shaun T. And that's probably the first time that you really experienced having to, you know, draw barriers, boundaries, and protect yourself and protect your energy, right? So tell me about that, because that's an interesting situation that not many people are ever going to encounter.
Well, there's the levels and layers to that. So if you were a Insanity grad or a user of my workouts.
Insanity grad, I like that.
We used to give out a shirt that said, I earned it with sweat if you finished the 60 days.
I love that.
But if you came out to me and you're like, I love Insanity, I'm like, yes. Like, I didn't necessarily need to create space for that, because I'm just like, it was like a badge of honor if you walked around and you're like, even if you finished one workout, you're like, yeah, like, we're in this club, you know what I'm saying? Like, we get it. It's not those people. It's the people that want to use your energy without really having it's very transactional and not depth. It has no depth, you know? So it would be people who didn't necessarily respect what I did or who I am.
Clout chasers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let me use you to get here. But it was never like, I hate calling people my fans, my fit fam. It was never the fans, you know. It's always the people who are like, how can I use you as a step? Yeah. And literally to step on.
They don't know you or know anything about you. They just see, oh, he's really famous. Or like, they have like a list of people that who's famous, who's hot right now, right?
Yeah, they didn't complete the workout. Yeah. Because the person who completed the 60 days, they have the investment, like they get it. Like, I'll be walking through an airport talking to my husband, Scott, and someone will turn around and be like, I knew that was you. They didn't even see me. They heard my voice. Like, it's those people that's like, but yeah, you know, it's,
even that group of people, like, I know it's a very kind energy that you have and feel, but as somebody who also, has coached a lot of people, it is hard to protect your space, even when you love people, even if it's like a big group of people that you love, it's still difficult because everybody wants like a little bit of Shaun, and protecting that is hard.
The only time it gets tough, this is the only time I get annoyed at being Shaun T, is when I'm with my kids and I'm having like because like,
family time.
Being a dad and having a moment with your child that you'll never get again is really important. And I don't like when I'm holding my kid and they're talking to me and they're like, we're in this like really heartfelt moment and people like abruptly like inject themselves in that moment. Like if I'm walking and I'm holding their hand and I'm in Target, like absolutely, come on up and say hello. But if I'm holding them, that's the only time I get annoyed, because I'm just like, my kid time and that connection is really, really important. But yeah, I don't really get that. The thing is, I don't really get rude people coming up to me, because I'm not no offense to singers or actors or something like that, but I'm not an actor. Like when you see me, you're seeing, I'm not acting on there. I'm not scripted, right? I'm not here to entertain you at all. I do not want to entertain you. Even when you come to my live workouts, this is not for entertainment. This is for you to leave feeling better about who you are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you've taken on a lot of different chapters in your life, and you are definitely somebody who wants to continue to challenge yourself. Take on something that is physically, mentally, and maybe even emotionally taking you to the next level, right? Digging deeper.
Yes.
And I was finally able to get in touch with you when you decided to take on bodybuilding, because that's my like wheelhouse.
Oh my God, are you trying to say that's like when I started paying attention to you?
No,
I'm kidding.
no.
I'm totally
Maybe it
joking.
was. Actually, it probably was. Actually, to be honest. Well,
you were in my algorithm.
But, yeah, I probably was in your algorithm. But that's when I do feel like that's kind of when we connected, is when you kind of entered the bodybuilding world, right? Because you're probably, it was a different world for you. You're in the fitness space. And of course, naturally, if you're starting to invest yourself in bodybuilding, you're somebody who you're going to do your research. You're going to find out who's like hot in this world right now. Like what's going on. That's you, because that's how you probably, become the best at what you do, and how obviously you've now become a pro in such a short period of time. But I would love to know how you decided to take on that new challenge. After mastering the space of, group training and, infomercials and that whole world, you're like legitimately famous. And then what sparked your interest in bodybuilding?
It's very interesting. I kind of have to I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit.
Definitely do, yeah.
But I knew what bodybuilding was. Yeah. I remember I used to do an event in Connecticut. And right before I would go on stage, I would do this event yearly.
Okay.
And every year before I go on stage, I would have to go backstage. And my workout was right before the bodybuilding competition started.
No
so I would
way.
see all these, it was the guys that were getting ready. I would see all these guys oiled up. No, I wanted to have nothing to do with it. Did I think that like all these guys in Speedos and board shorts were hot? I'm like, hell yeah. Like you guys, cause I'm like, it's hot. Like I know how hard it is to train to get that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have nothing to do with it. I'm like
no.
I was just very much like, I thought it was cool. But I was like, I remember someone was like, you should get into bodybuilding. And I literally said, I was like, I will never do that. I was like, I will never do that. So I never had
Never say never.
I know, but I never had I always thought it was cool. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was like he's a phenomenon. So I'm just like, everybody loves like big shoulders and big arms and body, but I had zero desire. So I wanted to say that because the way I got into bodybuilding was completely backdoor.
Wow.
I literally, I played tennis for 11 years. I played at a pretty high level. Like I would do a pro-am and I would be a pro. And I didn't start playing tennis until I was 32, right? So I was tennis. I was 190
You're just a
pounds.
super athlete.
I was just like, I was on court with Serena and other, so I was a tennis
Everything you
player.
touch turns to gold.
Well, maybe I should touch you, Wendy, but you're already gold. But so like I would be that's what I did. I was like high energy, high intensity athlete. Like I just loved that. And then, I'm like 40, how am I, 46 now? So I was like 44 years old. And my shoulder just started hurting. It just started hurting. I couldn't play tennis. I couldn't hit a backhand. I was just like, and then I couldn't teach my classes. I couldn't do a shoulder press, with my little dumbbells that I used to use. I couldn't do all the stuff that I wanted to do. I could like hold a plank and I would have to change all of my workouts around my shoulder pain. And then I remember going to the doctor and I had a bone spur that tore my rotator cuff, and I also had a labrum tear all in my shoulder. And so I got shoulder surgery. I went to physical therapy, and both of my physical therapists were bodybuilders. But the female physical therapist, her name is Kristen. She was so beautiful. And I'm not like, she was beautiful. Her physique was beautiful. Her energy, like the way she walked, her posture. And I remember sitting on the table, getting my shoulder worked on. And I remember saying to my one physical therapist, the head physical therapist, I was like, I asked him, I was like, would you train me? And he was like, I don't have time. And I was like, do you think she would train me? And he was like, ask her. So Kristen was walking by the table. I was like, hey, Kristen, can you be my personal trainer? She was like, yeah. And she just kept walking. I had no idea that this woman, when she was in 8th grade, the summer of her 8th grade year, bought Insanity. And because of, I was her intro into, she like did sports, but I was her intro into
Everyone
fitness.
bought Insanity.
Right?
Everyone
but,
bought it.
I helped, I was like kind of like a catalyst for her to become a physical therapist, like to go to school. So it was like a full circle moment. So then she started training me in the gym because I wanted to get my shoulder. I couldn't do any high intensity stuff. So I remember I had like a 15-pound dumbbell on my shoulder and I couldn't even do a shoulder press because my shoulder was it was healing. Anyway, so she just kept training every day until my shoulder got better. And then I'm in this gym and everyone is training to be a bodybuilder. And every time they would come back from a show 2 weeks later, they would post their photo up on their stage photo up on the wall. And I remember being like, I want to be on the wall. I'm like, why can't I be on the wall, right? And then I said to Kristen, I was like, I want to compete. And she was like, if you want to compete.
And when was this? What year?
This was, I told her I wanted to compete in November of 2022.
Okay, that was not that long ago.
I started lifting with her in April of 2022.
All right.
So in November of 2022, I was like, Kristen, I want to compete. And she was like, I would love to coach you and do that. But she was like, I need to pass you to somebody who like really knows what they're doing. And that's when she introduced me to my coach, Justin Hurrell, who I love to death. And that's when in January of 2023 is when I literally started training to be a bodybuilder.
That's awesome.
With zero knowledge. I didn't know how to pose. I should show you, I should send you pictures to put in this episode of like the first time I posed in my underwear and I'm just like not even knowing how to do any, I look terrible. It's so embarrassing.
It's interesting because, and this is, over the years, and when I work with dancers, people who are really good at dancing, dancers are really good with movement, but it's like you have to like help dancers to nail the pose because it's like it becomes all the movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the last posing routine I saw of yours was awesome.
Thank you. I mean, now 2 years later,
you're
so
killing
much better. But because posing is very like, I think it feels like your body is a Rubik's Cube. Like it's kind of like you have to like twist and do all these. Yeah. It's not dancing is just like everything is in alignment.
Yes.
Where your end pose is not always in alignment. Right. You got to like hold your core. You have to like push your shoulder and your body. Yeah. I think what I've realized is that you and I can have the same height and weight, but our muscle distribution is different. So we can't pose the same. We have to showcase our body in the way that our muscles look. So that's why I think it's hard for The end pose is hard for
Right.
dancers. Now, the posing routine, this is why I love classic
Right.
physique, because, I love a little performance.
Yes, I know. Well, like there's a difference between performance athletics and aesthetic athletics. So for me, I was a track athlete. I was a gymnast. I was a dancer. I did all of that. And when I first started bodybuilding, it was different because all the muscles that I worked when I was, a gymnast and a track athlete were the muscles that threw my shape off, right? Trunk rotation when you're sprinting, you build a thick core, gymnastics builds really thick traps. But with insanity and all the high intensity stuff that you were doing, that is a whole different beast of workout. And the reason you're able to do bodybuilding is because now you're able to spot train and focus train and get around injuries and stuff like that. So how do you manage to blend the two now? Because you're still doing high intense. Like
I actually don't do high intensity anymore.
I don't do it. Actually?
I mean, when I was doing, I was anywhere between like 188 and 193 pounds. And I just can't do that at 230 pounds, but I still find a way to dance.
You do dance, yes.
This is so crazy. So I really haven't done, I've done low impact insanity.
Yeah.
Like I've done low impact exercises for insanity. But the last time I tried to do like a higher impact, I hurt my arch. I couldn't even, I was like, I can't do that. But anyway, I say all that to say, my body, I love how my body responds to bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool because even though I wasn't doing bodybuilding, I feel like my body was just like priming itself for this moment and this place in my life. And I just remember my first show, I was like, I know I can get ripped if I want to, but I have no idea what's going to happen on this stage.
It's a whole different animal. Okay, so you're in such an awesome relationship with your husband Scott.
Yes.
And I just adore you too.
Thank you.
And your twin sons, they're twins, right?
Yes.
I figured because they must be fraternal. I'm a fraternal twin
They're
too.
fraternal and they're via surrogacy.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting. We had an egg donor who donated lots of eggs, but the eggs that were transferred into our surrogate, because you have your egg donor, you have your surrogate. So there's two women involved in this situation and two men involved in this situation. So I fertilized one of our egg donor's eggs. Scott fertilized another one of our egg donor's eggs, and they put the eggs, the embryos into the surrogate at the same time. They both implanted, and that's how we had twins.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That is so cool. But that's basically what fraternal twins are.
Exactly.
It's two separate
Just
eggs
different
that are at the same time. So I have a fraternal twin. So I used to explain this to people when we were young. We used to explain.
And they didn't know. They're like, how are you guys twins but don't look alike?
Fraternal has two eggs. Identical is one egg. We had the whole conversation.
Yeah.
But, it's such an awesome situation that you have. Tell me about how you met Scott and how he came into your life.
Yeah, so I met Scott in New York City. Let's just say I met him
That was
in
an
New York
interesting
City.
laugh.
Because when we're out for drinks, I'll give you the full
There's
story.
a story here.
There's a story.
Okay.
There's a story. But when I met Scott, I knew literally like right away that I was just like, this is the human for me. I was like, literally the universe made this human especially for me because he's the exact opposite. When I met him, he wore like jeans, like a North Face jacket, like just didn't know how to dress. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is like so different than me and so calm, super hot. And just like
so are you.
Super kind. Thank you. So kind.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, what? Like this? And then anyway, so we started hanging out and just kind of didn't stop.
That's awesome.
And
how long ago?
So we met in 2010.
Oh, wow.
So we got met October 12th, 2010. We got married 2 years later to the date. So we've been married for 12 years now.
Oh my gosh. So you guys were together through a lot of your like rise and fame.
Yeah.
Tell me about like a big obstacle that you guys have had to overcome together.
So I think we've really only had two big obstacles.
Okay.
I'm gonna start with the easier one first.
Okay.
The easier one was it took us actually 5 years to have our twin boys. It was very intense because when you're trying to have kids via surrogacy, there's always, 4 people involved, especially in the male gay world, if, both men want to fertilize eggs. And so it was just like a constant struggle. And then, I really respect women to the utmost. I love women. I respect them. And so I wouldn't just be like, oh, this is our surrogate, like we're going to use her uterus. I would literally get to know them and show them like a tremendous amount of respect. So when it didn't work, we had 5 surrogates. So when it didn't work, it was like every time you had to like break off a relationship, but not to not be a part of your life anymore. It was more because I'm like, in order for us to have kids, we have to, find another woman. So it was really intense.
Crazy.
It was really intense and it was very expensive. Wow. So that was one of our like really tough, it was 5 years of struggle. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like you hear a lot about it in heterosexual relationships, right? Because sometimes like it's because of his reproductive system or sometimes the woman's reproductive system. But this was like a really interesting one where we had to like divvy up the job and figure out where our frustrations lie and when we should move on. It was very intense.
But you were not going to give up.
But yeah, we were not. Well, Scott was a professional soccer player. So he is a professional athlete and I'm Shaun T. So there was no giving up in the process. That's why I have this tattoo on my arm. It says, I have my glasses on. It's too hard, cross it out. I'm too tired, cross it out.
It's too long.
It's too long, cross it out.
I'm too busy.
I'm too busy, cross it out. Never give up. Like that's he and I to the max. Like we just don't give up on anything. So
is that how many are those like the amount of times that you tried to do the surrogacy?
Oh no, we tried. I think we got pregnant on our 12th try.
12th?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow, that is
But I found out we were pregnant on my 40th birthday, which was really freaking cool.
Oh my gosh.
We were playing tennis and our surrogate and our doctor called and was like, hey guys, like, we're pregnant. And then like we went for my birthday trip and we were on our way back from our birthday trip. We went to Turks. When we go to Turks? No, St. Martin. And we were coming back. We were on a plane from Miami to Phoenix. And our surrogate sent us a picture, like an ultrasound kind of picture. And it was these 2 little dark holes. And that symbolized that we were having twins. So it was really cool. But yeah, it took a long time. It was the best birthday ever. Wait, it was my 39th birthday, not my 40th birthday. 39th birthday.
Hey, it's a birthday.
It's a birthday.
It was on your birthday.
Old,
so that's like the fact that it was on your birthday. Yeah.
So that was our one struggle. The other struggle is very heavy. Okay. So the other struggle is before we got married, and this goes back to, it's where my sexual abuse took one of its biggest tolls in my life. Okay. So I'm going to get the chills. I'm going to try not to cry because it's so heavy. But imagine like, you're married when you meet your person and you're loving your person and you are not able to distinguish the love you have for your molester and the love you have for the person that you want to be with for the rest of your life.
Wow. Yeah.
It's really freaking intense.
Wow.
And so I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning, like just angry. And I would wake Scott up and I would be like so mean to him.
Yeah.
Like mean.
Yeah.
And we would end up sitting like in the living room. And I would think this entire time, I would be like, you're doing this. And he's like, I was asleep.
I wasn't even doing anything.
Right?
I was just sleeping.
And I get so sad when I think back to his face. Like he's sitting there, he's so calm and he's such a wonderful human. And this didn't happen once. And so I remember being like, I need to go to therapy.
Yeah. I
was like, I really need to go to therapy. And one time I couldn't make it to therapy, but I was just having a really bad day.
Yeah.
This is where I'm gonna get emotional.
It's okay.
And I like crying though, so it's fine.
It's okay.
So I just remember calling my therapist up and I was like, I am being such an asshole right now. I was like, I'm angry. And she was like, well, what's happening? Like, what's going on? I was like, I just keep waking up at 2:00 in the morning, like starting these fights. And so before I move on, I'm like, it's really hard to admit that you're at fault when it is like, emotional turmoil, you know? And I remember my therapist just asked me, she was like, well, what happened at 2:00 in the morning? And I was like, oh my God, that was like around the time where I was getting molested.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't until it was literally the most insane moment in my life, because I am in the depths of literal internal turmoil, not understanding why me, who I love to be like so jovial,
Yeah.
that I'm not able to allow myself to love the person that I'm supposed to love in the way that they deserve to be loved. And that was the catalyst to me being like, holy F balls. Like, I need to figure this out. So the rest of my therapy session was like kind of releasing that and like distinguishing the difference between the love that you should have for an adult partnership and a molester that molested you from the time for 4 years.
Like the Stockholm Syndrome that you were
Exactly. It's like you had to
basically
get
still
rid of
living
it.
in. Wow. That's insane.
So that was like really tough.
That's really heavy.
It was heavy.
Yeah.
I remember I was writing my first book around that time. And when that happened, I stopped writing my book. I was like, I cannot motivate people through a book and my words. If this is what's living in me.
Yeah. They always say, you can't pour someone else's glass unless yours is full first.
Listen.
So you needed to fill your own glass before you tried to fill other people's.
Because mine was like, and I tell people when people are like, they don't understand how their life is tainted, right? With negativity. They're just like, I'm like, if you take a crystal clear glass of water and you take one drop of black ink in that water, it taints everything.
Yeah.
So it's, and that, well, for me, I probably had like a whole jar of black ink. But like, that's what my life was like.
Right.
And even though I was able to like swim and live in this, I had to like basically refresh that water.
You know what's interesting though, is you were, talking about when you were younger, what bothered you the most is when you saw other people getting bullied, or you are somebody that, it doesn't really bother you so much, but it bothers you when you see other people, right? So early on, you found that your coping mechanism was to protect other people. You were always thinking about, and then when you started running group classes, you had large groups of people who, you were motivating and inspiring. And it's almost like it was all kind of a pacifier in a good way, right? And it was a coping mechanism for you. And then when you were confronted with it, it was like you realized that you were pushing something down, but not to make the fact that you were helping inspire other people, inauthentic or fake.
Yeah.
I mean, it was both two things can be true at the same time, right? It was a coping mechanism, and also it was you're doing something for the greater good. So you feel good about it, and you're also helping yourself without maybe realizing it completely, that you had things that still needed to be resolved.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, I never even thought about it that way, but it's very, very true. It's like your desire to help people transform is also transforming you. That's why I never needed a script. I'm like, you don't need to give me a script. I'm like, this is, I didn't realize it like that at the time. And I'm like, this is living in me. Like, this is how I motivate myself. That's why, like, when I have a trainer or like my coach, like, I could not have someone that's like me training me, because it's like the soundtrack of my mind is saying this. I need somebody to push me in a way that just requires, like, both of, like, Kristen and Justin, they're both extremely quiet people. Like, Justin, when it's time for me to, like, because I talk a lot. So I'm in the gym and I'm talking to him and I have a story. Between every set, I have a story. And so Justin will just be like, when it's time for me to start my next set, he'll be like, he just does that. And I'm like, I can talk and exercise at the same time. I did it for 25 years, But you're right. But like the motivation, like, I think when you're passionate about something, and people should allow that, to realize that you're getting something, even if you're giving something.
Right. Yeah. And like when I do think that there are, people that just just the art of giving, it really does help us like soothe things that are ailing us. But we still need to confront them. We still need to confront whatever it is that so you two got past that.
Yes.
Obviously, you were able to recognize that you needed help. You got the help. You guys got past it. You had your two beautiful boys.
Yes.
And now you're just one big happy family now, right?
We are happy. I'm so
Well,
blessed
maybe not
we're
big,
happy.
but you're a cute
we're
little...
big. We're
big energy.
I will say, just going back to the book thing, like I was able to launch my book.
Yes.
So our boys are supposed to be born January of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished launching my book, and they were born like 7.5 weeks early. So they came, like they just had a birthday. So they came in November, and it's just like one of those things where like you can't plan life.
Yeah.
And it was really incredible, but that they were born that early, because it was like this crazy thing. Like Scott and I were supposed to go on like a baby moon. We were going to go have fun like for the last like a week. We were supposed to go a week. We were going to 2 different friends' home. One of our friends, like she had a bell waiting there so I could go and I could like ring the bell, but I wanted her to bring me something, just like a fun trip. And the day before we were supposed to leave, our boys were born, and it was the biggest blessing because we just were able to be in the NICU. We met some wonderful people, and you know, I'm just thinking about that because I was just like, wow, like it was crazy. Like I launched my book, and then my life changed again. You know.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, when I launched my book, then the boys were born. It was like
that's a big.
It was because I finished that chapter of like, I'm not going to write a book. All right, I'm finally going to write this book. I write the book. I launched the book, and now I'm in this new chapter in life. You know,
getting your book published and having your boys. This is a whole new. This is like starting a whole new.
Yeah, that's why I talk about my book, and it just literally brought my book to life. I tell people, you know, you are running the relay race of life, and as a track athlete, like people forget to pass the baton to themselves. Like the lap is over, and you know, going through the lap. I have a chapter in my book titled "The Last 70 Meters," because if you know any race,
I was a track athlete, so
right.
You know.
So if you ran track, you ran a 400 meters before, and you know the end of that race is the worst.
Yeah,
and my coach would be like, don't run to the finish line, run through the finish line. And so when you are in that struggle at the end of a relationship, at the end of a project that you're working on at work, maybe you're just in a new place in your life and you want a new job, you have to pass the baton to yourself. Like there's no reason to hold on to the past, and just know that the end of that, because the person who gets the baton now has the momentum to move forward. Like you couldn't, when you were pulling the baton from your teammate,
yes,
you see them struggling, that gives you the power to be like, I see you struggling. Like, I got your back. I got all the energy in the world. I'm going to blast out of here and go. Treat your life like a relay race. Like continue to pass the baton to yourself. And
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that from you if you don't mind.
Steal it. You can steal it all you want.
Okay, good. So now, okay, here we are. This is our Make Your Mark series.
Yes.
You are a chosen one for sure.
Thank you.
You have absolutely, undoubtedly made your mark. I would like to know from you, you know, when you look back at everything that you've accomplished and then you look forward, right? What would you want someone to say about Shaun T and the mark that you've left? And then tell me also what you plan to do moving forward.
I just want you to know that I'm your biggest fan. Like if there's someone out there that doesn't believe in you, trust and believe. I get it. And you never have to be alone. Like I really am one of those people. I'm just like, even like in insanity, like when you're doing floor sprints and it's like 5 seconds left and I'm like, you're right there.
Yeah.
You know, like that voice, or, you know, as I always say, the stronger you get, the better you'll feel. Like, you know, you're right there. So I just want people to know, like, yo, Shaun T had my back. He was whooping my ass, but he also had my back. And what's next? Well,
yes.
I have this really amazing, I have the largest fitness group on Facebook called Dig Deeper Nation. It's 120 plus thousand people in there that we just run challenges all year long. I have a tour coming up next year, Dig Deeper Nation tour. Like, just come right. We're in January. We're going to be in Florida. We're going to be in Tampa and Miami. So you guys should come. It's going to be fun. But what's next? So it's that my boys just turned 7. They're doing really great. And then I'm trying to make it to Masters Olympia.
Okay.
You know, I just got that pro card, and I'm not going to let that pro card see where is it? These four stars on my arm. This is not a flex. I can flex, but this is not a flex. I'm like, yo, I want 4 pro cards. Like, so all of these stars represent my pro cards.
That's freaking awesome.
But I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those ones that's like, yeah, I got my pro card. No, like, I'm 40, I'll be 47 years old, and I'm hoping that I'm on that stage in Tokyo. I don't know what I'm going to have to do to do it, but I'm going to dig deep. I'm going to dig so deep. Every single, like, I'm fine.
You'll be there.
In my chest, in my abs. Like, I'm good. But this back, like, every single rep that I push in my back, that I'm just trying to, like, get it ready.
I have to ask you really fast, 4 pro cards, which categories?
Okay, so I have to tell you a story.
I'm trying to do the math on that.
This might make some people not mad, but like, you know, be like, oh, like, do this. So
mad because you showed up.
I showed up. So I was initially just going to do, because I didn't get my pro card at Universe, right?
Okay.
I was one place away
that.
3 times.
I talked to you after that.
I know. You talked to me right before. Wasn't it right before we did?
It was the day before.
It was the night before. It was the night before, and I was so amped.
Did I jinx you? No.
You did not. You did not. It was a blessing in disguise, to be very honest. So I missed it at the 40. I think I did 40 and over. I missed it by 1. 45 and over, I missed it by 1.
You were so close,
40
I remember.
and over, I missed it by 1. And then open, I missed it by 1.
That's the worst, because it's like so close.
No, it was 40, 35, and open. I missed them all by 1 place. But you know, I cried for like 2 minutes, and then I was fine.
Yeah, of course.
But I was just like, whatever. You know, I was just like,
on to the next.
There's no, like, I'm not giving up. I'm like, okay, if the judges want to see that, then I'm gonna show them what Shaun T has. You know. So then I went and I said to my coach, I was like, he was like, let's just do men's physique. Like, that's where you did really well with. I was like, okay. So we're getting close to the show, and I was like, you know, I really want to do classic physique because I love the pose. I was like, I want to do a posing routine.
Okay.
I was like, I'm pretty confident I'll get in the top 5.
Yeah.
Because you can do a posing routine. I'm like, I just need to get 5th place. Like, I just want to do a posing routine. So I did 45 and older and 40 and over and classic physique. And I got my pro card in both. So
you that's how you ended up with 4 pro cards.
So that's how I ended up with 4 pro cards. And then, got it in men's physique as well.
But your classic physique is where your heart is, and you want to do the routine.
I do, but I'm sticking with men's physique.
You could do either.
Now. Yeah, I'm gonna stick for men's physique to get to Tokyo.
Okay, all right.
Because these legs, the legs have to grow a little bit more before.
That's okay. That's okay. You're gonna do whatever you need to do. Well, honestly, I cannot wait to see you. I know that you're gonna shine on that stage, and I can't wait to see. I'm just so like amazed by everything that you do. I can't wait to see what Shaun T has in store next. And
well, thank you. I really appreciate you and WOLFpak having me on the show. I wear my bag everywhere. I have 3 WOLFpak bags, but I really appreciate it. It's been really wonderful. And thank you for allowing me to share my story.
I am so glad that you did. It's going to help a lot of people. You're amazing, Shaun.
So are you, Wendy.
Should I call you Shaun or Shaun T?
You always call me Shaun T.
Or Shaun T. Or Shaun T.
Shaun T with a Y.
SHAUNTY.
People used to think I say Ashanti. I wanted to tell you that. You always say, hey, Shaun T, hey, Shaun T. And I'm like, Wendy, you can just call me Shaun.
I started doing that. Well, on that note, I guess we will call it a wrap.
Thank you.